All right, welcome back. It is still News Up. I did tell you that our conversation will be about the minimum wage. Yes, with the devaluation of the nation's currency, the floating of the naira, the removal of fuel subsidy, it's been one form of hardship for Nigerians to another. The price of goods and services has gone up with revenue or income still remaining the same. This has brought about a clamor for an increase in minimum wage, even though some people have argued that minimum wage always often only affects federal government workers. Today on the show, we will be looking at that concern. You're aware that the federal government had set up a tripartite committee to look at the concerns around the minimum wage. And for the committee, they are looking at what they call sustainable, implementable, and fair minimum wage for Nigerians. I'm being joined right about now by Adewale Smart or Yerinde, who is the DG, the Director General of the Nigeria's Employers Consultative Association, NECA. So good to have you on the show, DG. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Yes. Let me start off with where we are. There's been this clamor for a minimum wage, and then after a while, government decided to set up a committee. First and foremost, were you, the organized private sector, were you part of the tripartite committee set up by the federal government?
Thank you very much for having us once again. Now, I think it's very important that we set the context so that we don't run into the errors of the past. And this also affects government and representatives of government. Now, there is a tripartite that is recognized by the International Labour Organization. That for all labor-related, workplace-related, employment-related issues, even to the extent of laws and regulations that affects the workplace, the tripartite plays a critical role. It is driven by the tripartite, input must be made by the tripartite, and there must be a consensus by the tripartite for it to be actually implementable. Now, for Nigeria, as it is, NECA, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, represents the employers because it's the most representative business membership organization in Nigeria. Now, organized labor is represented by NLC and TUC now because they are the representative of workers, and the third leg is government, represented by the Ministry of Labor and all other agencies under it. So those are the tripartite. So for every issue, anywhere you hear of tripartism, that is the organization that it's referred to are those three: NECA, organized labor, and government. So it's very important that we set that tone for any conversation that is tripartite in nature, and any of these bodies is not called into that negotiation. It is basically a bipartite agreement. Bipartite in the context of two of them decide to go into an agreement that is not binding on the third party. So it's very important that we clear that. So coming to the national minimum wage, by Convention 131 of the ILO that specified minimum wage fixing mechanism, it is a tripartite structure that involves employers, organized labor, and government. And that was what government did in constituting that committee. So NECA was actively involved, the organized private sector was actively involved because we were part of the inauguration that was held on Tuesday, also with labor and government.
All right, fantastic. So what exactly will be the OPS position here? We did hear, or that we did see in the papers this morning where Labour is saying that 200,000 naira minimum wage is not realizable at this point in time. I don't know. What in your context, in Labour's, in organized private sector's context, is a fair, sustainable, and implementable minimum wage?
You know, each party of the social partners, each party from the tripartite has the valid right to make proposals that this is what we want, then those proposals from labor, from government and employers will be brought to the table, to the negotiation table through the committee's negotiation. And the critical parameters, these parameters are standard parameters. They are, we don't really have to reinvent the wheel, as it were, because the convention that battered this process and the convention that gave rise to this whole context of national minimum wage also specifies the core parameters that we must use to arrive at a consensus at a minimum wage, which is one, the needs of workers and their families that you must bring on table, economic factors that you must bring on table, economic factors based on national context, not on what is happening in the US, what is happening in Britain, based on national context, economic factors, effective protection of workers, you must also bring it to play, and development of sustainable enterprises. Those three variables or those four variables must be brought to play, and the committee must try as much as possible to arrive at a balance, to balance those four variables so that whatever comes out will significantly meet those four conditions. If it doesn't meet the four conditions and the minimum wage is too high, you have created a pattern already, a pattern for non-compliance. You have created a pattern that might distort even the economy. Now, if you set the minimum wage too low, you have also created a pattern that will perpetuate poverty and reduce the purchasing power of the people, of workers. So those four parameters must be balanced and must be looked at dispassionately, backed up by reliable data for us to arrive at this anticipated national minimum wage. That would be our position. Other issues concerning figures, concerning the right figure or no right figure. In fact, there can never be a right figure. Everything will be born out of the negotiation. So whatever the tripartite arrives at as the minimum wage, that will become the right figure.
So let's look at what the concerns could be for the organized private sector, because we've often seen cases where the federal government sets the minimum wage, and then the organized private sector says they can't pay, all given to current economic realities. So how does this play out for the organized private sector? Because you and I understand the ripple effect of an announcement of a minimum wage. There's going to be an automatic rise in the price of things in the market, not forgetting the fact that it is not just the federal workers that go to the market, the private employees also go to the market. And then when we don't enjoy the corresponding increase in our income, we are faced with more poverty. I don't understand. How does the private sector hope to deal with this?
Now, let me first, if you permit me, to correct the impression. NECA and the OPS were a very strong member of the ILO. In fact, we represent global employers on the governing body of the ILO. So we subscribe to all provisions of different conventions and recommendations that have been ratified by Nigeria. So we support the context of the national minimum wage. We support the need for the review of the national minimum wage. And it will surprise you that even the last minimum wage of 30,000 that we arrived at, the last meeting of the committee that was held on the 5th of October in Transcorp, that was the last minimum wage. It was the employers, it was NECA and the private sector that brokered the 30,000 that we arrived at now. So we played a very critical role in shaping the context of the negotiation and also arriving at the peace that we have enjoyed in the context of that 30,000 national minimum wage. So it is not totally true that employers, private sector employers, are not paying the national minimum wage. It will also surprise you that currently the private sector in different industrial groups, from the Association of Food, Beverages and Tobacco Employers to Federation of Construction Industry to Chemical and Non-Metallic Employers Association to the Human Capital Development, we are paying far above the current 30,000 as minimum wage. So that is to show the responsiveness of employers, private sector employers, in addressing this issue of national minimum wage. Now, there might be one or two employers because of the economic situation. You know what the economy is saying now. Interest rate is stifling the business of many employers. Forex is about 1,005 as of yesterday. We don't know how much is it now. It's also stifling the operations of the organized private sector. Now, the regulatory and legislative environment is also creating its own bottleneck for organized private sector. So, and it's showing everywhere. Businesses are leaving, big brands are leaving. The question is, why are they leaving if the economy is hospitable for them to operate in? So, notwithstanding those, the private sector is currently in different industrial groups, industrial sectors. We are paying far above the 30,000 national minimum wage. So we are an advocate of the national minimum wage. We are an advocate that it should be reviewed every 5 years. We are also an advocate that as it is done in many climes, done in different countries, different developed countries, that we should also have a mechanism that automatically adjusts the minimum wage as the vagaries of the economy is either going south or is either improving. So that is our position. We support it. We are ready to play our part in the context of the negotiation, and we are hoping that other parties, other social partners, organized labor, and government itself will play its part, come to the table with good faith so that we can achieve a realistic and implementable national minimum wage for our workers. Mind you, I am also a worker, and just as you mentioned, you are also a worker.
It's realizable having that automatic mechanism where the binary just changes when economic realities changes. Do you think that can work within our climate, our Nigerian climate at the moment? We're looking at all the bottlenecks and all the bureaucracies that we run with as a people. Do you think that could ever work? Can we ever get there?
We believe strongly it can work. We cannot underestimate the potential that we have. Go everywhere. Go to the US. I probably won't be surprised that those that crafted the system are probably Nigerians. Go to Switzerland. Go to France, where these mechanisms are in operation. It's possible. It's highly possible that those that designed that system or are operating that system, it's highly possible that they are Nigerians. So why can't it operate here? We believe it can. If government can continue in its efforts or deepen its efforts to get the economy back into the growth trajectory. Now, all this issue about minimum wage, about the figure, the quantum, is basically the issue about the economy, as it were. If the value of the Naira is high, if the Naira is strong, then you can have 100 Naira, or you can have 10,000 Naira, and that 10,000 Naira will be able to buy you goods that you probably will be able to buy with 20,000 Naira when the economy is bad. So everything boils down to the economic situation. If the economy is good, people become much more prosperous, and people become much more calm within the context of what our disposable income can be or will be. But on the flip side, if the economy is challenged, then the agitation will be higher, the way we have seen it now, because the disposable income of an average Nigerian, an average household, is progressively reducing, which naturally, whether you're a worker or you are not a worker, which naturally stirs up some level of agitation, because your means of sustenance, your means or the means that can aid your existence is progressively being compromised by different economic vagaries. So we are hoping that government will deepen its reforms, get the country out of the woods as quickly as possible, because once you take care of what they call wage goods, something like transportation, once we deal with our transportation, once we deal with the issue of shelter, and once we deal with the issue of food, because those three are the critical three that everybody, whether you're a worker, whether you are an SME, or whether you are operating in the informal sector, those three items, we all patronize those three items. If government deals with those three items significantly, and their prices significantly reduces, then the agitation, the general agitation, will naturally reduce. And once the value of the naira also increases significantly, then the naira will be in a position to buy more goods, so that the whole agitation, the whole context of national minimum wage will probably be reduced. Notwithstanding the fact
God did not
that
create
minimum
us.
wage must be reviewed every 5 years according to the Act.
Fantastic. So I'm a lot more concerned about what you see. You did talk about getting the economy out of the woods. I'm a lot more concerned about what you see and how soon we could be out of the woods. I'm talking about signals, reforms, reviews of policies that could take us out of the woods. Exactly what do you see, and how optimistic are you that in the shortest possible time the economy will be out of the woods? Because if we don't get out of the woods, give us minimum wage of 500,000 naira, we will still be as poor as we are right now.
As I said, I will also like the minimum wage of 500,000. Sincerely, I will love it, because it increases my capacity to purchase. And if the national minimum wage is 500,000, it also increases the capacity of the business to sell. Because 500,000, you have an average worker, the households, they have more money to spend. And because nobody can chew the naira, so they will use the 500,000 or more to purchase goods from the businesses. So the business will also have opportunity to produce more, to sell more, to expand and create jobs. Now, in the instance that the business cannot sustain that, if you force that down the throat of organized businesses, which is practically impossible, if you, for whatever reason, you insist on 500,000, and it compromises the ability of the business to pay, compromises the ability of the SMEs to pay, it comes with its own negative consequences. In fact, you will be cutting off your nose to spite your face, because the consequences are wide, ranging from unemployment, and the more you have, the more the rate of unemployment increases, the more you have insecurities to deal with. So it's a huge context, and we believe strongly that when the committee convenes, that all those parameters that we will look at it, the needs of the workers and their family, the current economic situation, the need to protect workers, and sustainable development of sustainable enterprises, because that is basically the pillar on which the economy rests.
What do you see? What signals are you getting that we just might be out of the woods anytime soon? We have the FX challenge here and there, very key. We have the inflation challenge also staring at us right in our faces. What do you see, DG?
Well, without being a soothsayer, or without being a bringer of bad news, we can only say that if government persists or continue in driving the reforms, continue to plug or to block the loopholes, government continue to engage the private sector and other stakeholders, government continue to be bold enough to step out of the realm of any policy that is not working. One of my bosses used to say, it's better to be a bit inconsistent than to persist in error. So once a policy is not working, government should be bold enough to call stakeholders, look, we want to change this policy, and this is the direction we are going because it's not working. If we continue in that path, then we can start cutting the corners and moving towards trajectory of growth, probably by the end of the second quarter. But this first quarter, we see these challenges continuing. Towards the second quarter, we also see this continuing as government continue to stabilize the economy and continue to ramp up revenue, forex, even with all the different issues, all the different interventions that they are doing. But definitely, if there's going to be any positive improvement, if we don't see it happening in the first quarter, we also don't see it happening significantly in the second quarter. Probably towards the middle or end of third quarter, we might start seeing for some significant changes in the economy.
How much more can Nigerians take if we don't see, we don't see significant changes in the first quarter? I saw in the papers today where there's a new report. It says 1 out of 10 Nigerians are poor. That's the new report I saw on the front page of one of the papers today. I'm sure it's the Guardian newspaper. And then if this persists, if these supposed reforms persist, and then we are not seeing significant improvement, that means more Nigerians are going to fall below the poverty line. So I'm a little bit more concerned about how much more time, how much more can Nigerians take? How much more can the Nigerian businesses take? How much more can the manufacturing sector handle? How much more can the organized private sectors handle?
During the last administration, there was a report that so many Nigerians are facing multidimensional poverty, and which was worrisome, which was of big concern to us. So from the context of multidimensional poverty for Nigerians, organized businesses are also facing multidimensional challenges that is making them to exit this environment. We used to say, sometimes you will lose, and this is very important, you will lose the main context of the conversation when you look at just the organization that is living. For every big organization, it probably has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other organizations, either SMEs, either MSMEs, that are supplying it inputs. Those organizations, their existence also relies on the existence of that big organization. Now, once that big organization leaves, for whatever reason, it will directly affect, or directly or indirectly affects every other organization in that value chain that is supplying it inputs. So it is not the workers of that big organization, not the workers of GSK, not the workers of these organizations that we should only look at. What are the fate of the organizations that are supplying these big organizations, supplying them inputs? What is the fate of the staff, the employees of those organizations that are supplying this organization inputs? So that will give us a clearer view of the risk and the threat that we face. And we just hope government and other stakeholders, it goes back to government, to deepen its intervention. Not only deepen it and make it as quick as possible. As August we have said, if somebody needs oxygen, somebody is in the emergency room and he needs oxygen, the best you can do for him is, for whatever reason, get him to stabilize. If it's a pipe of oxygen you want to use, get him that pipe of oxygen. Let him stabilize. Depending when you come up with the machineries or the systems that will take the person out of the emergency room. And that's what we ask. That whatever intervention that government want to give to the manufacturers, whatever intervention that government want to give to the private sector, give to the MSMEs, while we commend them for what they have done, we acknowledge that there has been a lot of conversation in customs, a lot of conversation with the issue of the CUG bosses, a lot of conversation at the private sector concerning one intervention or the other. But we need those interventions to be hastened up quickly so that we can save as many as we can save before other organizations exit the country.
Fantastic, Adewale, fantastic. So I would let you go in 60 seconds. Yes, how soon do you expect this committee to come up with a minimum wage? How soon do you expect we hear from them?
3 things will determine how, determine when. 1, good faith. Everybody comes to the table with good faith. if everybody come to the table with the mind to understand the context and the realities of other social partners. And thirdly, if all of us come to the table determined to foster trust. If you come to the table with those three, it will determine how long or how quick the committee's work will be concluded. But we believe strongly, we trust that this element can be brought to the table by other social partners, because the employers are willing and also ready to come to the table. We'll be coming to the table with those three critical parameters: good faith, trust, and understanding of the realities of other social partners.
Extremely very key. Thank you so very much, Adewale Smart Ayerinde, the DG of NECA. Always a pleasure having you talk to us on News Up. We definitely will touch base with you again. Have a great day and a lovely month. Yeah.